Here, let's see anything. Vicky, can you hear us now?
Evening, Mary Kate. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Dr. Cook. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello, Renee.
Hi.
Evening, Mac. Happy almost Thanksgiving.
Same to you, Dr. Cook.
Thank you, thank you.
I am not seeing a quorum quite yet.
No, and just to let you know, Steve Grande might not be able to attend, and Alessandra is not attending. She just
Okay.
sent me a text. Mhm. This might be Bill.
Great.
And then we're missing Janae.
Oh, good, Vicky. You can hear us now through the phone?
Dr. Cook, I think she can hear us, but she can't speak. We can't hear her.
Okay.
Mhm.
Bill, we've got you by phone.
No, oh, you found another clicker?
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
I've been on here since 5 to 5. But...
Is Janae in?
I don't see her.
I don't see her. And Eric?
I don't see him either, Nanette.
No, thank you. And Maurice? Yeah, we don't have a quorum yet.
No. It's okay.
We need one more for a quorum.
Is Jeff on here? Jeff
Yeah, I'm
Settler,
on. Yep, I'm here,
Hey.
Bill.
It's on. Okay, so now we have 6. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Springfield Technical Community College Board of Trustees regular meeting of Monday, November 23rd. Nanette, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Mary Kate Murin,
Present.
Alexander Anderson, Vicky Kraus,
Present.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
here.
Maurice Lindsay, Janae McDonald, Elizabeth Posito, Jeff Sattler,
Present.
and Max Starks.
Present.
Great.
We have 6. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. May I hear a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 26, 2020?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Jeff was a second. Any
Yep.
discussion? Hearing none, may I take the roll, Nanette, to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of October 26, 2020?
Yes. Mary Kay Murin,
Yes.
Alexander Anderson, Vicky Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay, Janae McDonald, Elizabeth Posito, Jeff Sattler,
Yes.
and Max Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's transition into trustee committee reports. Trustee Kraus, would you be able to give us an overview of the ad hoc committee on program discontinuations of Tuesday, October 27th?
Yeah, so the committee, can I do both meetings, just sort of a summary of where we're at? So the committee has had, sorry.
No, sorry, Vicky, would have to approve both sets. So as long as you pause, then you can continue on and we'll get a vote on the first meeting.
Okie dokie. Let me just get to that meeting then. Our first meeting brought together the ad hoc committee to discuss the program discontinuations. That's the 7 that had been approved by the administration in response to feedback from the community and the staff regarding reinstatement of some or all of those programs. During the initial meeting, there was a lot of discussion as to the bases for the decision, and the committee requested at the next meeting that Dr. Cook would make a presentation with respect to the basis for the decisions that had been made on the program discontinuations. And a second meeting was then scheduled to discuss those recommendations and review the information.
Great, thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept the ad hoc committee on program discontinuations meeting minutes of Tuesday, October 27th?
So moved.
Motion to approve, Bill Johnson.
Do I hear a second, Mac?
Second. Yeah, right.
Mac with trustee Starks with the second. Discussion? Hearing none, Nanette, would you please call the roll to accept the ad hoc committee meetings of October 27th?
Mary Kay Murin,
Yes?
Alexander Anderson, Vicky Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay, Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Elizabeth Posito,
Yes.
Jeff Sattler,
Yes.
and Max Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, Vicki, why don't you continue on? We'll jump to E. This is the Ad Hoc Committee on Program Discontinuations on Tuesday, November 17th.
And I'm not sure, Nanette, did those meeting minutes get distributed? Because I don't think they were in the original package.
Yes, but I sent them on Thursday. I sent.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I don't have the original package, but at the second meeting, there were presentations requested and made by Dr. Gorman and Dr. Cook regarding the program discontinuations, and Dr. Cook presented some financial detail around each of the 7 programs regarding what the costs associated with bringing those programs back to have them reinstituted would be, and his recommendations around which programs should be considered for reinstitution. In the recommendations initially were made that those programs that were being recommended would be reinstituted for the academic year 2022-2023. There was robust conversation around the various programs and the information presented, and after much discussion, the committee voted on 2 motions. One motion was to recommend to the next Ways and Means Committee, which I believe will be in January, for review, the re-implementation of 5 of the 7 programs. The 2 that were not included were automotive and cosmetology, and that those be brought back for the academic year 2021-2022. And there will be a further discussion and recommendation that those programs be funded by, board designated funds to meet the shortfall. The other 2 programs, the motion was made and approved to recommend to the Ways and Means Committee again in January, that because of the costs associated as presented for those 2 programs, specifically automotive and cosmetology, were so significant that it was believed that a independent third-party review should be instituted to review the costs associated with those programs, for further discussion by the ad hoc committee and a future recommendation. So those 2 programs specifically would be proposed for an independent review prior to making a recommendation. And those will be presented at the January Ways and Means.
Great, thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept the Ad Hoc Committee on Program Discontinuations of Tuesday, November 17th?
I make a motion to accept the minutes from the meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on Tuesday, November 17th.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Janae. Discussion? Hearing none. Nanya, would you please call the roll to accept the November 17th Ad Hoc Committee on Program Discontinuation meeting minutes?
Yes. Mary Kate Murin,
Yes.
Alexander Anderson, Vicki Krause,
Yes.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay, Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Elizabeth Posito,
Yes.
Jeff Sattler,
Yes.
and Max Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Committee on Internal and External Relations that was held on Monday, November 2nd. Trustee McDonald.
Yes, thank you. So we started off the meeting with Dr. Cook providing some more context to some of the responsibilities of or what the Committee on Internal and External Relations is comprised of. And so it covers programmatic and operational aspects, some of those aspects including personnel and some shared responsibilities through Student Affairs and the Office of Advancement and External Affairs and Human Resources updates. We also received a review from Human Resources around the STCC CARES initiative, which works to address some of the financial and emotional and physical and occupational needs of STCC employees. We also received an update from the Office of Student Affairs. Darcy Kemp presented on the Anti-Racism and Inclusion Alliance that was instituted over the summer by Dr. Cook. And she gave us a review on what the first meeting included and who will be sitting on that committee, along with myself, Darcy Kemp, Rick Greco, and Dr. Vanessa Hill. We also received some key updates from the Office of Advancement and External Affairs from Denise Hurst about where they are with the fundraising, and as far as the, escaping my mind, as far as the foundation money goes, Building 20 and the STCC Tech Park, as well as some communications around marketing for the college. And we closed out with personnel updates and some accreditation updates from Dr. Cook.
Great, thank you so much. Do I hear a motion to accept the meeting minutes of the Committee on Internal and External Relations on November 2nd?
So moved.
Great, thank you, Vicki. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Betty. Discussion. Hearing none, Nanette, would you please call the roll to accept the Committee on Internal and External Relations meeting minutes of Monday, November 2nd, please?
Yes, Mary Kate Murin,
Yes.
Alexander Anderson, Vicky Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Elizabeth Bosito,
Yes.
Jeff Sattler,
Yes.
and Max Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Trustee Starks, we're heading into investment subcommittee of Thursday, November 5th, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So actually, it's the investment committee meeting on November 10th.
10th, I
That's
see
fine.
that, yep.
That's fine. That's fine. We met with Fiduciary Investment Advisors, or FIA, for our quarterly investment update. Michael Chase provided updates to the committee on best practices, important elements of an investment policy statement, as well as a review of the college's investment policy statement. We also talked about, kind of the split of our actual dollars. So the investments managed by FIA total $16.5 million as of September 30th, 2020, which represents a fiscal year-to-date increase in a portfolio value of a little over $650,000. The long-term portion of that 16.5 million is 11.5 million. And you can see in the package, the results for the quarter for our long-term portfolio were in line, actually a little better, than our hybrid benchmark. And on a year-to-date basis, as we know, the market was kind of all over the place. We suffered on a year-to-date basis, but the fiscal year-to-date, is also in line, slightly better than the benchmark. The short-term portfolio is just under $5 million as of September 30th. We had a good, well-rounded discussion around kind of the approach that we typically take, with our how much funds we actually have in our short-term versus long-term. Typically we allocate a maximum of a adjusted unrestricted net position to long-term. But due to the uncertainty, it was recommended that we don't do that. So, right now we have like I said, we have just under $5 million in the short term, and I feel comfortable, with having that level of funding, anywhere between $4.5 to $5 million in short term. Again, given what's going on and the uncertainty of going forward with COVID and the like, you want to make sure we have access to funds more readily. if we did, do what we would typically do, we would have about $1 million versus that 5 million in short term, which is again just too tight, with what I wanted to do. So I certainly concurred with the recommended approach, and that's what we're going to do going forward. Also, after that, Dr. Cook asked Mr. Chase to help us to forecast and project our investments at the next quarterly meeting, which I thought was a good ask, so that we can keep a very tight handle on not only where we are, but kind of where we're going. And then we concluded the meeting.
Great. Thank you so much. Do I hear a motion to accept the November 10th Investment Subcommittee report?
So moved.
Great. Thank you, Renee. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Vicki. Discussion. Hearing none, Nanette, would you please call the roll to accept the Investment Subcommittee report of November 10th?
Mary Kate Murin,
Yes.
Alexander Anderson, Vicky Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Elizabeth Esposito,
Yes.
Jeff Sattler,
Yes.
and Max Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Trustee Starks, back to you for the Committee on Ways and Means of November 9th.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So we started with our typical review of the fiscal year 2020 revenue and spending report, through June 2020. Senior Director of Finance and Budgets, Jason Cohen, presented a budget narrative summary detailing the fiscal year 2020 year end. Overall, revenues were in excess of budget by $367,000, and expenses were under budget by $2.7 million, which was certainly that underspending was driven by the college move, to remote operations, as well as the deferment of facilities projects. We then went into our fiscal year 2020 fourth quarter trust fund and vendor expenditure reports. There were no surprises there. They were pretty straightforward and in line with what we would have expected. We then moved to our fiscal year 2021 budget detail, where we started with Dorothy Unger giving us a cash flow projection overview. And she noted that the college is in a solid cash position and will likely not need to seek a divestment. We then moved to our fiscal year 2021 revenue and spending report through October 2020. A finalized state budget appropriation for STCC for fiscal year 2020 is still not approved. We also, I added, as part of that discussion, I asked for the financial impact of the 7 discontinued programs. It wasn't available at this point, but Mr. Cohen stated that we could review that at the next meeting, which you think is appropriate. We then went into our fiscal year 2022 budget preparation and process. Yeah, I did say 2022. It's amazing how time flies, but I thought it was appropriate to kind of bring this discussion to the meeting. Dr. Cook brought that up. Basically asked, did we want to change the process? The typical process is to review drafts of the budget in March and April, and then have a final budget review approved by the Board of Trustees in May. I didn't want to change that. The ask was to do want to do something more frequent or more or sooner. I just felt like with the uncertainty, it would really just be consuming time as opposed to being more accurate. So I asked to continue with the same process to, again, have the draft budget reviews in the March and April timeframe, and then final, to the extent that we can, we'll see what happens, but a final approval in May. The next Ways and Means Committee meeting is January 11th, 2021 at 5 p.m. and then we adjourn the meeting.
Great. Thank you, Mac. Do I hear a motion to accept the Monday, November 9th Committee on Ways and Means meeting minutes?
So moved.
I think that was you, Bill. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Bill Johnson.
Okay.
Maurice was first, so.
Oh, so sorry, Maurice.
Okay.
Discussion. Hearing none. Nanette, would you please call the roll to accept the Committee on Ways and Means for Monday, November 9th?
Yes, Mary Kate Murin,
Yes?
Alexander Ann, Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Elizabeth Posito,
Yes.
Jeff Sattler,
Yes.
and Max Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a request for trustee action for the approval of an appointment for Russell Denver as chair of the STCC Assistance Corporation. Would someone like to read the motion, please?
There you go.
Okay, I will read the motion. So I move that the Springfield Technical Community College Board of Trustee, pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 273, Section 125, Acts of 1994, approves the appointment of Mr. Russell Denver as chair of the Springfield Technical Community College Assistance Corporation for a 3-year term, January 1st, 2021 through December 31st of 2023. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Jeff Sattler.
Discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Just briefly, you'll see a bio for Mr. Russell Denver in your packet. Long time community contributor, if I can say that. We do have Russell with us tonight. He'll be sharing more on the proposed project of relocating the School of Health over to the Tech Park. Longtime serving member of the Assistance Corporation, also known as the Tech Park. But again, I just want to say that we are thrilled to have his not only longevity on that corporation, but also that sort of steady insight that he brings from having been, I think, on the select board for East Long Meadow for some time. He just really understands a lot of these public entities and has been a tremendous partner for the college. So for what that's worth, I wanted to be sure that you had that perspective. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Cook. Nanette, hearing a motion in a second, will you call the roll to accept the motion, please?
Mary Kate Murin,
Yes.
Alexander Anderson, Vicky Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Elizabeth Posito,
Yes.
Jeff Sattler,
Yes.
and Max Starks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Congratulations, Mr. Denver. We're looking forward now to transition right into your presentation on major capital projects.
So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to start from the beginning. Let me just double check. Everyone can see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So thrilled to now have our incoming board chair for the STCC Assistance Corporation, STCC as it's called sometimes, but also as we know it locally as the Tech Park. It is a quasi-public body, pretty unique in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What you have also in your packet is an MOU that dates back to 2015. Trustee Maria Gonzalez signed on behalf of the trustees with, I believe it was Ricky Sway, who was the board chair at the time and is the outgoing board chair, with a memorandum of understanding. So a little bit of context there. The Assistance Corporation does exist by way of state statute, legislation. And again, I have two great folks. We have Russell Denver with us this evening, but also Paul Stelzer from Appleton Corporation, which is the entity contracted to run the Tech Park. So I invite them to join us on camera and help with this. But I'm going to walk through this really significant major capital project. This is that relocation out of Building 20 for School of Health. This is a a vital move. We have talked about this for some time, and we have been engaged with Massachusetts, both our local delegation, but also with the executive branch, the Executive Office of Education, including Secretary Pizer, have really had long conversations along with DCAM, right, the Division of Capital Asset Maintenance and Management, on trying to unravel this conundrum. So by way of just a small reminder, Building 20 houses some of our most high demand and, if you will, complex programs. There are 11 associate and 4 certificate programs in that building, 7 of which are not offered anywhere in Western Massachusetts. In a given year, it serves over 700 students, both in credit and non-credit. And as you've seen, it is the healthcare is the fastest, highest growing demand sector that we have in the Pioneer Valley. The building itself is, dare I say, functionally obsolete. It has a FCI, what is known as a Facilities Condition Index of 1.0. That, by industry standards, essentially is calling out for divestment in some form or fashion. And when we know explicitly that it has nearly 70 million of deferred maintenance, we have not been able to use the top 2 floors because of a lack of asbestos mitigation that we have, again, significant needs to address. With that, and again, knowing that we've been talking for some time now with DCAM about possibilities, and when they essentially looked on campus for solutions, they found price tags that exceeded any that you'll hear tonight or previously. Again, this is our best hope with moving forward. By virtue of my position as president of the college, I sit on the Assistance Corporation board as well, and have been able to navigate the sort of back and forth with this. But I really do want to turn to Paul Stelzer and Russell Denver to sort of pick up this framing and start a little bit with the tech park itself. So if I can welcome in Paul and Russell, let me turn it over to you.
So good evening, Paul. Are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I think I'll start, but as Dr. Cook so ably put it, that the Assistance Corporation really was created by statute, and its mission is to support the college in any way we can. Both of our facilities are really intertwined with each other. Really, the fiscal health of each is intertwined. Unfortunately, during 2019, our largest tenant, Liberty Mutual, has vacated their space. It was something that had been working on by Liberty for a number of years and was facilitated this year, I think, obviously as a result of the pandemic. It was moved forward. It has left a significant hole in the technology park, both fiscally and physically. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for the allied health program to move into the tech park, be in very close abutting, obviously, the college with the technology park. So there would be extremely or very little confusion on the role of the students, on where they're going to be located. There should be little disruption in the programming as a result of any move to the technology park. And it really is a win-win for both sites, for both the college and for the technology park. I'll let Paul discuss a little bit more about the particulars and how we're trying to come about with some of the funding to kind of make this happen. So Paul?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you. I think the best thing for me to say is there's always the healthy tension between the public and the private purpose. And in this particular case, we're both eligible public entities. That's a very key sentence. The technology park has received significant dollars from the state in the past for projects. We've also received, at the time, many of you may recall, in the history of the college, you did operate the Chevelli Enterprise Center as a small business incubator. We received annual operating subsidies from the state for that, so the college could continue to run that program. We now are in the middle of the healthy tension between really pushing for this money to come in, and I can report that the $20 million that was authorized by the House bill is currently in joint Senate House committee because the Senate reported out $5 million. We are working with our local delegation on that issue. As of this afternoon, the committee just got back to working the last couple of weeks after the election. And while the House and Senate are working on the budget, they have not finished their joint committee work yet. And we are working with, again, with our local delegation to get that back to the 20 million.
So Paul, can I just add one thing?
Yep.
So Senator Eric Lesser from Longmeadow is on the conference committee. I did have the opportunity to speak to him directly about the importance of increasing that $5 million on the Senate side to match the 20 million that we were requesting on the House side and was actually approved. If the trustees wish to move forward with this plan, everybody is going to have to row in the same direction to make sure that we are in constant contact with our legislative delegation so that we can get the funding that's needed for this program. Thanks, Paul.
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. So the second piece of this puzzle is the combined Division of Capital Asset Management request for 25 million. And that is informed by the readiness study program that DCAM has now authorized. As you may recall, the college submitted a program to relocate across the street to the tech park for a building that would be new and attached to a building that we would renovate. At this point, what makes sense for DCAM, and while we may be in a hurry, and the college certainly is in a hurry given the condition of Building 20, which Dr. Cook has repeatedly advised DCAM on our numerous calls and meetings, this program of study really should be done in a holistic way for the college. So what that means is they have to design the most supportive and appropriate space and take into account the likely long-term impacts of the pandemic on programs and operations for college work. I can tell you that that is an important sentence because you might think it would mean that spaces would be smaller, and then actually they could be larger depending on the program for social distancing. I can also tell you that this is a workforce development issue, which we continue to remind DCAM and we continue to remind our local delegation. I happen to be a trustee at Elms College, vice chair of the board there, and I have for many years worked on our nursing program. And there's no question that the local hospitals are in great support of your program at STCC and are in support of this particular project, particularly post-COVID, as there will be a wave of expected employment needs at the various hospitals. So we are at the park, we are supporting the college in this request every manner way we can. We are currently waiting for the DCAM to finish their study. That will be done on or about the 18th of December, where we'll get a chance to have a good look at it. And I believe it's Dr. Cook's intention is to end up with a report back to the trustees, I believe at your January 25th meeting. I can also mention one other thing, and that is the cost considerations here are significant in that it just makes sense between building a new project or renovating a property. The significant differences here in the $15 to $17 million range are very important at this particular time when resources are going to be scarce for the state. DCAM will only have so much money to allocate. Our state legislature will only have so much money to allocate. So it's important that we address this in a manner that's responsible. And again, this space study needs to be done irrespective of where you go. It needs to be done so that you're right-sized when DCAM comes out of the box with their final study. The other thing that's very important is the operating and the cost. So there's an occupancy cost you have now in Building 20, and it will be our job working with the college going forward to determine where the operating costs will go in a new location. We are just beginning that exercise. It's a little too soon to start it, but it's very, very important for the college, because we exist to support the college, that we have a responsible, appropriate transaction with the college for you to take over the space, particularly with so much, hopefully, state funding that might be appropriated for this. And then there's also the final cost. I have to put a disclaimer, because we don't have construction drawings at this point, that the 36 million is an extremely and highly educated conceptual number, but at the same time, things could change when the plan gets finished with DCAM. Again, our timetable would be hopefully to have all of this ready to go by December of 22. The long-term plan for Building 20 with DCAM would need to be addressed with DCAM. That's something that we are not particularly involved with, but we're happy to help with as friends of the college. And I can also say that the trustees of the college, all of you here and your colleagues, and the STCC Board of Directors need to join in support for this, as it's really important for the health sciences school. I can also mention that earlier last week, the study group from Boston met with the faculty at the school, at the health school, and the department chairs, and that engagement in the readiness study was occurring all last week to get their input as well at the ground level. So we are again patiently waiting for this study to move forward, but at the same time, we have agreed with the college to hold this space off the market until the studies are done. We can report that these spaces are, that may be a little hard to see, but you can see the yellow at the top of that screen and the green space. Those are the two connected spaces that would be the most likely locations for this, having viewed this with the dean and Dr. Cook and others from DCAM virtually. So, we can get into the exact location and everything else, but this would give the college the appropriate amount of space, and we have additional space on the upper floors if the space plan kicks over to a higher need based on the pandemic. So, Dr. Cook, Madam Chair, I would stop talking and be able to answer questions.
So I just want to add one thing, if I could, before we get to questions. So this is a very important project for the Assistance Corporation for the Tech Park. That is a large space that's available. We need to fill it. We provide upwards to, when Liberty Mutual was there, over 800 jobs in the Tech Park. It is a major economic engine for the neighborhood and for Springfield. There are a lot of really wonderful paying jobs that in the park every day. The synergy between allied health and the jobs that are being created, not only for the hospitals, but for the entire community of Springfield, are very important. And having the synergy between the college and the Assistance Corporation really matches what the initial legislation for creation of the park was. And I would be remiss if I just didn't point out what a great champion and advocate Dr. Cook has been for this project. As he indicated, he sits on the board for the Assistance Corp, but he also sits on the executive committee. So there's just been some really good give and take between the park and the college, and he's been wonderfully facilitating this process right along. So thank you, Madam Chair.
You're on mute, Madam Chair.
So can we jump right in with questions?
Absolutely. Go ahead,
Okay,
Mike.
awesome. So a couple of questions. First, can you go back to slide 6? This help me understand again the difference between the 54 million and the 36 million. And when you're describing the 36 million, what is the range on the 36?
Sure. Thank you, Trustee Stark. So the The 54 million was the original conceptual budget that was done when the college submitted their initial program to DCAM for the building that would be a new, just call it 40,000 square foot addition to an 18,000 square foot building. So that would be brand new 40,000 square foot space. The differential to so let's call it 60,000 feet. So the differential is the renovation of the existing space that we showed on the last slide, as opposed to new construction, new foundations, new footings, new basements. We were able to take a property and renovate it, as opposed to building 40,000 square feet new. That 36 million is the conceptual budget. It includes all of the hard costs and all of the associated soft costs, that total project costs that DCAM would ask you to include, which is architects, owners, project managers, so on and so forth. Depending on the final funding, we would have to go back in the final drawings and look at that number, Trustee Starks. But I believe that you know, we may see some escalation in that number, but I would be remiss if I gave you a number, but it's not going to be 54 million. It might creep to 40 million, but it's really hard to say that without a set of construction drawings.
Okay, great. Understood. My next follow-up was, any other demand for the space besides STCC?
Yes, Trustee Stark. So we currently have a number, believe it or not, in this environment, we do have a number of tenants that are looking at space at the tech park. We have had a number of firms look at one section of this, including a large user for about 30,000 square feet. Their plans are on hold, so that works well for us with timing. Again, because our legislation is very clear that we exist to work for the college, and we actually survey the college's needs once a year to make sure that they don't need any space. We do have some activity, but I would say, to our new chairman's comments, this would be a game changer, we believe, for the park long term, and also for the college because of the proximity to the main campus.
I see. And last question from me. So if this doesn't work out with STIC, it sounds like you do have other options to occupy that space. So the tech park, while it might not be as advantageous as it would if you did do something with us, you do have other options.
Well, we've kind of have those on hold, Trustee Starks. I would say that this is our main goal. We did commission a study with Cohn Resnick's National Real Estate Consulting Group out of New York City. They provided us with 4 or 5 different options because we wanted to provide for both our operating management group, but also for our board, the opportunity to look at what was the survival plan. And clearly, this is the best plan for us. We believe it's the best plan for the workforce with the college. However, if we got to the point where somewhere along the way the decision maker said this wasn't going to work, then we would have to turn our team back loose on the marketing efforts. So I would not say that we had a bird in hand, but I would say we do have activity.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate the responses.
Yes, Trustee Starks.
Paul, this is Jeff Sattler. First, I want to say thank you to you and Russ. I'm very happy that you're involved in this project. And I know it's a lot of time, but when you're looking at the new building and the renovation, the total amount of square feet, is that about 90,000? Am I looking at that right?
Trustee Sattler, the plan that we showed is all of the available space within proximity of the main green area. So as you look at the green space and the gold space, which I believe is now on the screen, that's the main plan for the School of Health Sciences right now. That together totals almost 60,000 feet. However, the remainder of those spaces, Trustee Sattler, are available should they need be. And we just wanted to show the trustees a glimpse of available spaces we currently have in the park.
Well, that's a good point. That leads me into my next question. I just have two, this one and another. We know we have 15 programs. Are part of the due diligence to determine how many students we can accommodate with that space, and is there room for growth?
So Dr. Cook, do you want to take that one?
I was going to jump in.
Yeah.
A couple things. One is currently in building 20, we're in about 90,000 square feet. So in terms of right sizing, when we are looking at, let's say in the vicinity of 70,000 square feet, we were absolutely finding some efficiencies where we can. What I would also say is this is as much about stabilization as it is about enrollment growth. I think I've shared before on a number of occasions, we have one of the, if not the largest nursing program, certainly in this immediate region, right? We take about 100, 110 students just in our nursing program alone. It's about stabilizing there because further growth might actually incur further losses. I think we've looked at that before where because of the accreditation requirements on these programs and the faculty to student ratios, we lose a lot of money. And when we make them bigger, we lose more money. So it is not necessarily a growth endeavor. This very much for us is a stabilization effort, particularly because there is no good backup. Everything on campus carries a significantly higher price to renovate, or retrofit even harder buildings that are less contiguous to one another. So that's why the incoming chair noted how this is win-win both for the college and for the assistance program. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you. And one last question. When do you foresee the budget funding for this fiscal year or next fiscal year? How close are we to receive funding? Or hope
Paul,
to
you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Trustee Sattler, the Division of Capital Asset Management request, we believe will be sorted out by June of 21. That seems logical to us, given everything that's going on. The Economic Development Bill will get reported out in some fashion, Joint Senate House Committee. And again, that will simply be an authorization, as everybody knows. It will then be up to us to turn that into an appropriation with all of our hard work together. Because combined, that gives us, we believe that gives us enough money to do the project. To redevelop the space in an appropriate manner that you'd be used to. So I would say that, the actual from day today to actually seeing dollars in the college's account, we could be a year, 18 months away from that. But by the same token, we would get a approval to proceed with planning, design, construction. But the big part is to get everything approved first. So this project could stretch to occupancy in 2023. It wouldn't surprise me.
Mhm. Thank you.
Hi, this is Betty Sposito. My quick question was occupancy. Is that the projected on here estimate of December 2022?
So thank you, Trustee Sposito. The timetable was estimated to hopefully get the college in occupancy by December of 2022, yes. But a lot of things would have to be perfect and fall in place. So that's why I hedged just a little bit and said, depending on these funding cycles and taking these appropriations and awards into actual funding, we may stretch another 6 months or so. But right now, because of the condition of Building 20, which is dire, as a facilities professional, I've walked through it. This is, we'd want to put a full court press on the safety issues here.
Thank you.
Especially on the timetable, let me also invite a shared worry on this as we look at 2022 or 2023. Just in the last 3 years alone, we with DCAM have spent $2.4 million in emergency repairs to Building 20. So having to push on this timetable as much as we have to still be 2 years or longer out is of course a worry because of the infrastructure and the agedness of Building 20 and its structural failures that it's already experienced. So that is the worry. And that is why we are pushing as hard as we can to try to move this boulder along. Because it is going to take a long time to, it's certainly one thing to pursue these funds, but then the architecture process, the planning process, the build process is going to take many, many months.
Additional trustee questions or comments?
I was just wondering if these are the two largest spaces at the tech park. Are there any other spaces that may be occupied but are similar in size in terms of occupancy? Should they in the future become available as these spaces did? Whereas one may consider renovation on the main campus and shift things over here temporarily while those renovations are happening. We're just curious as to what other spaces that are similar in size here that can accommodate shifting programs back and forth while we do renovations on other buildings outside of 2020. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, so I can answer that, Chairman Denver. So these are our two biggest floor plates that are contiguous, meaning it provides for a lot of adjacency for the various programs in the School of Health Sciences, including dental program. So we do have other floors in the green spot building. We do have other floors that could become available, but at present are not available. So what this does, there's a little bit of space on the third floor, but these are really the two biggest floor plates. The I would remind everybody that the manufacturing program is in the lower level of the green building, if you've been over to see that. So it takes up about half of the floor of the lower level in the green. I call it the green building. It's called Building 111. So I would say that while there are leases that are rolling over that we're renewing, there would be spaces that come available, but they don't have the width and the breadth of these floor plates. They're very narrow, as you can see by the floor plan.
Great, thank you. Additional comments, questions?
This is Jeff. I have another question. Based on where we think funding costs are today versus 2 years from now, and assuming we get fully funded for the 36 million, do we foresee any leveraging or any borrowing needed outside of monies being funded? Or will their costs be increasing from 2 years from now, it might be 40 million instead of 36 million?
So Trustee Sattler, we do have an escalator in this number of 4%. But it's a very astute question. So again, plan specifications, sizes, supply chain, cost of construction materials could change, and we would have to make that adjustment. But that is why our request to the two combined entities is at 45 million. Clearly, if we didn't need it, we wouldn't spend it. But I can't imagine a scenario where once the college got into moving and figuring out its furniture, fixtures, equipment, that you wouldn't need most of these funds. But we do have an escalator in there. I do understand your question, but that's, it's a point in time until we have construction plans.
Yep, thanks.
Two additional points to that. One is, if you'll note, there is not an ask of trustees to, let's say, utilize reserves to see this project through. We are still hopeful, particularly with the legislative effort, that joint House Senate committee can really come through for the college. That would be significant. What I want to try to telegraph for trustees is not only this project and its cost, if you will, for creation, then it's about carrying it. What we don't know yet is how to map, if you will, what we would call licensing agreement, basically the rent. It's just like we pay about $166,000 a year for the mechanical engineering program, that manufacturing program over there. We don't have space in our budget right now for $500,600,000, if you will, worth of rent on a space like this. So that certainly would need to be further conversation with trustees about how to afford that aspect.
Great. Mr. Denver, Mr. Seltzer, thank you so much for the report. Really appreciate the time. I think everyone and all trustees understand the challenges. I like to say as opportunities that we have in the future, and will completely keep us updated. The review, Paul, I think it's coming back. Was it the December 10th? Is that correct? That initial review?
I believe it's December 18th, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I think we'd be very interested in getting that as soon as possible, and then yet to forward it to the trustees so we could take a look at that when possible.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
No, my
Thank you, John.
pleasure, and thank you.
Thank you both.
President's perspective, Dr. Cook.
Yes, briefly, I know, especially just the run through of the minutes, how much trustees have invested time this year. It's been remarkable, and I'm particularly grateful. A few key updates as we head into Thanksgiving and holidays and the end of the fall semester. A note on campus testing. To date, we've done over 700 tests ourselves on campus through our contract with AMR, local ambulance company. And we've been able to keep that on-campus positive rate under that all-important 1%, which I think, again, is a credit to our campus protocols that we really worked on. We are seeing a frequency in the need for testing, particularly with that nursing program that we talk a lot about. They went from needing our students to access their community clinicals. They needed a biweekly negative COVID test that we helped source to now they need that weekly. So we went from about an average of about 50 tests that we were doing on campus to just last week, we had 168. Again, there was a cost that we were absorbing for all of that. So I do see a ramping up in our own testing over the remainder of the 3 weeks of the campus. If you haven't in a while, if you take a look at our website, right at the top is the link to the coronavirus page. It gives a nice, thorough sort of review with all of this information. We've done, I think, really good work to communicate all of these, not only results, but also all the efforts to sort of mitigate. So take a look at that. There's a lot to be proud of. No news yet on some significant elements related to budget and our fiscal outlook. So here we are on the cusp of Thanksgiving, and we do not have a final state appropriation figure. We only just opened this week for sort of full recruitment and attempts to retain for spring semester. So we don't know where spring enrollment will be. And then, of course, Building 20 and the funds for that. We don't know where that joint house Senate are. So I'm hoping that by the full board meeting at the end of January, we actually will have some perspective, if not some joy on those, that we would know our state funding for the year. We would know where we are with Building 20. And we are going to know where our enrollment is for spring semester. So we will continue to look ahead and plan accordingly. On the personnel front, a robust process has generated 3 finalists for the chief financial officer, the CFO position. So we are moving diligently with that. I know Trustee Starks has been involved with that process as well. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to make a hire in relatively short order, because that person will clearly need to give some time and notice. So I'm hopeful. I don't know if that we'll be able to onboard a new CFO by January, but perhaps by February would be ideal, especially given all these fiscal, budgetary, forecasting needs that we have. So more to come on that as I ultimately have to make a hire on that position. I would say this too, my last point, if you had a chance to see my note to the campus today in advance of Thanksgiving. So it went out to all of the employees, trustees, students. People are weary. As I've made house calls, as I've called them, talking with students and employees across the college, a lot of time in front of the computer, Zoom fatigue, and even just the lift from our faculty to create all of this online effort. And our students who have really tried to hang in there. I know that there is a need for them to hopefully get some time off this week and recharge. So I know that they're looking forward to it. But be proud, trustees, that we have managed to get this far, preserving what we actually did on campus. It is somewhat unusual as a Massachusetts community college to have done STEM labs on campus the way we have, the way we needed. and certainly those health programs, working through those clinicals in that simulation. There's a lot to be very proud of with having navigated that, because it's going to be just as hard with, as you've seen, the elevation of COVID all around us, and what we have in store for spring to navigate that. So again, we have certainly done our level best to position ourselves for whatever comes our way for spring semester. As I segue to accreditation, I will say again that it has been an important focus for well over a year for this college. Institution accreditation only happens once every 10 years. We have been spending over a year planning and creating what you've heard described as our self-study. We have our 2 co-chairs back again to give you an update. Suzanne Smith, our Dean of Institutional Research, Christina Atwater, Professor of Business Administration. And again, I just want to also applaud their efforts to serve as facilitators and helping move us forward. Again, that self-study is taking good shape for the April visit by the New England Commission of Higher Education. Again, a very, very important point in our process. Accreditation gives us, on behalf of our students, access to federal financial aid. So there are some really critical elements to the accreditation that we are seeing too. So with that, Madam Chair and trustees, I want to say in an early way, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for everything this fall. And I'll turn it over now, I believe, to our self-study co-chairs.
The Accreditation Self-Study Project Committee shall not grow weary until May, be sure. We've taken the time from your feedback, from your survey feedback, to put together some information about projections for the committee and suggested projections. So we're going to roll through some of the responses we received, and then we've taken the time to put together suggested projections. These are not projections that we would in any way dictate, but we thought for the efficiency of time that it might be useful for you to see some suggested projections. And just remember that the projections are the commitment that will be published in the self-study by the Board of Trustees. Your commitments, these projections will be listed in Standard 3, which is focused on governance. So the second slide will just be a review of where we stand.
Yes, so good evening, everyone. So we are now at the point of our self-study where all of the standards are focused on projections, which again are our commitments that are going to also set us up for the next strategic planning process, or they'll at least inform the next strategic planning process. So we have a self-study advisory group, which is comprised of some cabinet members, faculty members, and staff who have read the appraisals in each of the standards and are coming up with projections for each of their standards. Those will be aligned with the campus master plan and the academic plan. So it's not like we're coming up with new things. So it will be, if those plans are already in place, and they will be continuing to implement them, but it will also set us up for the next strategic plan. So in line with that, for Standard 3, which is organization and governance, we did have the Standard 3 committee send a governance survey to the campus. We also sent a survey to the Board of Trustees. Recall the last Board of Trustees meeting. So we received 3 out of 11 responses to that. We asked several questions, which we had presented here. We also supplied the draft of Standard 3 for feedback. We haven't received any yet, but that doesn't mean that we can't receive any before then. So the draft of the self-study is going to actually go to NECHI, to someone there to take a look at on the 11th of December. And they're very good at giving feedback about what we need to include, what we need to add, what we need to change. And then we will send it from there to our One Voice editor. And that person is going to take care of the style and making sure it all sounds like one person wrote it instead of 100. So there'll also be a call to the community for feedback on the draft. And it will go to the Board of Trustees in January, at your January meeting for endorsement. And then the site visit is in April. So that's where we are. We're closing in on it.
So just as a reminder, the projections that we've prepared for you are based on the survey feedback, the responses that we received. They are all founded in Standard 3. So these are not projections that we have kind of contrived on our own, but they're directly related to the standards that are required for NETCHI accreditation. And if you can advance the slide, John, we want to be sure that you recognize that these commitments would be written into the Standard 3 self-study, the Standard 3 part of the self-study report, so that the commitments would be published and available to the campus community and obviously to NETCHI. So we'll start with standing committees. And we'll kind of roll through this where Suzanne will speak to the question and responses, and then I'll present the suggested projection. So you can go to the next slide, please.
Okay, so when the Standard 3 committee was looking at trying to describe the charge of the Ways and Means and the Internal External Relations Committee, they did come up with some language on Ways and Means, but nothing for internal external. So we're trying to get an understanding of what is the charge. And thanks to Trustee McDonald and Dr. Cook for actually earlier speaking about the charge of that in the review of the internal external meeting that took place. So, but we asked the board members about this and got one description. So they said that they couldn't find anything either in the bylaws or anywhere else that was actually a written charge, but that the purpose was to create and foster a cross-collaborative environment with internal and external constituents with the common goal of enhancing student success. And then that there was a description of what happens in the internal external committee, which Trustee McDonald also spoke of, receiving updates about what is happening with new hires and retirements and separations, marketing, facilities, and advancement. And I believe it was characterized as the programmatic and operational workings of the college. So Chris can talk about what our suggested projection for this is, given that there's nothing in the bylaws about this.
Yeah, and so I think that's the key here is this is kind of a simple projection as that the board might consider to add some detail into the bylaws that are explicit about the charge of the Ways and Means Committee and the Internal External Relations Committee, something that would be codified and included in the bylaws. So we'll pause for questions and then at each slide in case there are any. And I guess what we might be looking for at the end of this is to see a way for commitment to these projections to find themselves in the self-study. So whether that means a motion at this evening's meeting, if you think it's that simple, or whether it means some additional thought here.
Yeah, I think Dr. Atwater, it was clear after doing the survey that we definitely need additional descriptors within, but maybe even a complete review of the bylaws. So I've been associated, I think, for 5 years, and we've never discussed that. And speaking to Dr. Cook, of course, right, that we don't have a history of that. So I don't know if there's been anyone sitting on the trustees that can remember the last time we've had a subsequent and a robust review of the bylaws. It's probably something that needs to be done in short order.
Okay, so the projection could be substituted for that, a robust review of the bylaws. And is there a time frame that you might consider for that? A couple of years to review the?
God, I hope not. So, I mean, I think within 2 years is completely obtainable, but, would really love to do something potentially by the end of this year. We can easily put another ad hoc for those who might be interested in doing that, or at least, get us through next school year fall. So maybe we're in that December of 2021 timeframe. Dr. Atwater?
Madam Chair, one thing for you and for the trustees to think about, you certainly have your retreat in September that you could leverage. And that would coincide with efforts by the college to launch a strategic planning process. So it would certainly seem to dovetail nicely.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think we're prepared to go with a motion tonight, but we will meet in January, and then I could get a little bit more information and hopefully put those ad hocs together and have that information that then could be kind of folded into the report.
And we'll be happy to put these revisions together to send to you for that.
Great.
The next slide is based on open meeting law compliance.
Yes, and so we have written into the self-study, both in Standard 9, which is about integrity, public disclosure and transparency, and also Standard 3 on governance, about the trainings that the trustees have had about open meeting law. And then we got responses from our survey saying that that the open meeting law has been reinforced, and that the committee feels that they follow the open meeting law. We don't have a projection recommended at this time. There had been mention, I know, of being careful of any serial conversation that could end up becoming considered deliberation if a quorum was met on any topic. But otherwise, we don't, we feel like we could confidently stick to our description that's already in the draft of the self-study about compliance with open meeting law being effective.
No, and I think, what's happening now is there, as I'm sure you're aware, is the required trainings that are happening across the Commonwealth, right, for all Board of Trustees. So I think there's an opportunity, a potential projection is to go through any kind of LinkedIn or any type of additional learnings that either are going to be provided by UMass or the Commissioner of Higher Education. We could do something of that nature and kind of fold it in if need be.
Great.
So the next slide is about channels of communication.
Yes. So the question was about how can you sustain communication with the campus community, and then to also please share examples of communication with the institutional community. And so this comes right out of the standard. One comment was about that, how the communication from the administration and the president has been, especially since COVID, has been timely and complete. That the board pack has been a really beneficial, allows for referencing to minutes and board documents. And an example that was given was the invitation for faculty to speak about the program discontinuation. In the current draft as it's written, there are some projections already having to do with communication between the AUC and the administration. And so we're asking the board to think about its communication, not just the communication in one direction towards the board, but its communication with the rest of the institutional community. I'll let Chris talk about.
Yes, so the projection here is simply that is, and again, it's meant to be broad. It's not meant to be prescriptive. So the idea is for the Board of Trustees to be thinking and considering about, and then ultimately creating a plan for communication that includes channels of communication with key campus stakeholders. I think oftentimes we consider that one communication point with AUC, but the other stakeholders that might include the MCCC, AFSCME, and other key stakeholders on campus, including NUPS in some way. So the idea here to focus on shared governance so that during decision making, the input from many constituents is considered.
Yeah, that's something we definitely need to jump in a little bit more. I can read the projection, but I think we would like to kind of narrow that and kind of prioritize short-term, mid-term, long-term kind of goals. And so why don't we put that also on for that January? Let me just speak to some of the trustees and get some additional thought. And then we can get back to you on that.
Okay.
Atwater, is that okay?
The next slide was about the periodic review of the CEO, again, coming directly from the from Standard 3.
And so the response was a description of how the evaluations had been done in the past, generally, but by the board chair in a small group, and that this year an ad hoc committee was formed. And there is still the remaining question about the comprehensive evaluation that is supposed to take place in the first 3 years and then every 5 years thereafter.
So the projection here includes the possibility, and again, the evaluation by the committee, if you would like to continue utilizing that ad hoc process. And if so, then potentially if it's done more than 2 years in a row, that it not be ad hoc anymore, but instead be codified in your bylaws. So that's, again, a consideration, not prescriptive.
No, and I think it's a good comment, and that would be decided by the trustees as we continue to move forward. Definitely makes sense. And for the comprehensiveness, right? So we can ensure the robustness of making sure we get to additional stakeholders. Yep.
Great. And then the last slide is the Board of Trustees' own self-assessment. And so
yeah, so the NECHI, they have new accreditation standards coming out in December, and we're subject to them. So they've given us a heads up, but one of them has to do with this standard and the Board of Trustees, but that the Board of Trustees periodically and regularly self-assess their own effectiveness. And so we kind of wrapped this into another question that we also had about risk management. And so related to that, we have another projection.
Yeah, and so the feedback that we got about risk management was that board members, the 3 responses that we received, board members felt very confident in the way that they not only hear what's happening on campus, but also make decisions related to that. And so this is the opportunity for just that continuous improvement cycle to assess yourselves and to make sure that if there is something to be improved, that it's considered and then some action taken upon it.
Great.
So those are the suggested projections we have. So we could take questions, and if you have any, and then again, update the projections and send them to you so that you can consider them during your January meeting.
And I would like to add something about this one in particular. We had forwarded and presented, I think last time, some instruments that were examples of tools that boards had used for self-assessment. And so as part of that, we would recommend, possibly that's another thing that could be done at a retreat when you have that kind of time.
Or just reiterating some of the additional trainings that the Commissioner on Higher Education has just implemented as a review process, right? And so I'm not sure, Dr. Cook, I'm sure you can answer this question. Will it be every year that the trainings that the commissioner's handling, or are they going to do it every other? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, we've been sort of biding our time on this because it's actually just new as far as we understand. And this has been the presidents talking with one another that our trustees are required to actually complete this training. That's sort of new territory. And I think it snuck up on all of us that there would be that kind of obligation. So as we sort of seek more clarity, this is one of those questions, Madam Chair, around, well, how regularly will it be offered? How static will it be?
Mm-hmm. And I can find that out from my contact at the commissioner's office, and I'll have that answer. And I might even have it before I can hit you both with an email. Great. Questions, comments from other trustees? Great. Thank you very much for your time and appreciate it. Let me get together with and my hope is to get some additional information or add-ons to the projections. And would you be able to email me that too, that slide? that presentation, Dr. Cook or someone?
Yeah, we'll utilize Nanette. I saw Chris and Suzanne nodding their heads. We'll be sure we get that to Trustee.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. Perfect. Moving on the agenda, we're now in any old business. How about new business from the committee or the trustees? Great. So just quickly, I wanted to thank trustees who participated in the self-study survey. It seems that we still need and could ask for additional assistance with our trustees to go through and, at least from the projection perspective, potentially suggest additional ideas so we can ensure that we give all the information needed to ensure our accreditation down the road. So I'll be reaching out from that perspective. And given that survey, it did come to light that it is time for a review of the bylaws, just to find out and go back when the last time that was done, speak to some other people to really kind of set up that process and to make sure that we do have at least a robust conversation of what those bylaws can and cannot allow us to do. And Dr. Atwater, to your point, is to enhance some of those descriptors of the missions of the subcommittees. Makes sense because those also we can use as a recruitment tool as people and trustees come and go on the committee, which is definitely needed from a diversity perspective. So thank you both very much. We've got a lot of work to do. And I know you will continue to be busy. You're not taking breaks over Thanksgiving, neither will I. So I'll definitely reach out and get some individuals for them to get some additional feedback. Again, Mr. Denver, Mr. Stelzer, thank you so much for the information. Really, really appreciate it. I want to, if I don't see everybody, to really ensure a very, very fun Thanksgiving, but please, health and safety as our main pillar to make sure everyone stays safe and everyone can stay with their families, stay safe and healthy. The date of our next board meeting is Monday, January 25th, 2021. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Vicki, and do I hear a second?
Second.
Janae? Great. Nanette, would you call the roll to end the Board of Trustees meeting, please?
Yes. Mary Kate Murin,
Yes.
Alexander Anderson, Vicky Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Grande, Eric Hagopian, Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Maurice Lindsay,
Yes.
Janae McDonald,
Yes.
Elizabeth Esposito,
Yes.
Jeff Sattler,
Yes.
and Max Starks.
Yes, and happy Thanksgiving all.
Thank you. Same to you.
Great. Nanette, thank you for all the help. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving.